Hey guys, BassGeek here, and today we're going to talk about my favorite pre-spawn baits, and I'm going to show you how I throw them. This is actually a continuation of the 6-Minute Sunday I did last month. Now, what this is going to be is, last month, you know, we talked about when the spring movement, the spring bite really starts. And that, for me, is about 51-degree water temp. The bass will begin to pull up. They'll begin to pull to the banks, even though they're still on steeper drops. And I showed you a lot of the baits that I would use then. Now, this is going to really be from that mid 50s to 60 degree. This is when they're really moving to those shallow areas. So they're thinking about spawning, they're really staging, they've moved to the backs of the creeks, but they're or you know, up on the flats, the first drop on the flat, but they haven't committed to the bed yet. And that's what these baits are going to be about. So now when those fish really get up, they really move to the backs of those creeks, they're really ready to start that spawn. One of my favorite baits to fish those muddy flats, even those main lake bigger bays, is of course the Rattle Trap. Now I'm going to throw it in some sort of red, some sort of variation of a crawl. And this is going to be a 1/2 ounce of red eye shad. Now there's 100 different types out there, but generally what you're going to do is you're going to throw it out on these flats and you're just going to wind it back. Now you can yo-yo it. I just had a bite. One of my favorite times to fish it, for me, because I fish, as you can tell, a lot of highlands reservoir lakes, is when they really move to the backs of those creeks, those big flats, and I get to just kind of stop and go or just burn it. I mean, I'm throwing it in, you know, a foot, 3 foot of water up here, and it's just, you know, I'm just kind of burning it back. They're feeding. You know, I'm gonna let it drop to the bottom. Again, this is a 1/2 ounce. I'm gonna put my rod tip down. I'm gonna crank it. This is a Lew's LFS. It's a 6/8 to 1. Generally I'm target fishing with my rattle traps, so I'm throwing it around cover a lot because I fish clear water. So I fish with a shorter rod. This is a 6/8, but I do like, for this, when I'm really needing to make these long casts, just these, you know, I like a little bit longer rod. Now you can get in here if the water's a little colder or you get a cold front. You can do the yo-yo method, but when they're up here at this point and they're thinking about getting on the bed, I'm throwing this out there to get a reactionary bite out of them. The next bait, and it still plays, it plays all the way through, different types however, but it plays all the way through the post spawn, and that's a jerkbait, guys. Now the jerkbait, there's just, you can throw it anywhere. Creek and just short deep pockets that might have some timber standing in it. Long points like this one. And guys, again, based on the water temp, as the water temps move up, we're gonna move it faster. As the water temps are, you know, lower, we're gonna move it a little slower. We're gonna twitch, twitch, pause. Twitch, twitch, pause. You know, but again, you're not going to pull it with the rod tip. You're going to make sure that you're pointing that rod back out there. And really the only thing that's going to make a difference in where I throw this or how I throw this is that water temp. As it gets closer to 60, I'm going to make sure that this pause is a lot shorter. One of my favorite times to pick up the jerkbait, and when it seems like it's at its best, is once we get over that 55 and you know, you get a cold front coming in. You know, they'll get out, they'll suspend. You know, if the water is dropping, you know, like what we've run into on Top Secret Lake S the past few times, a jerkbait can play big there also. Because those bass, when that water drops, they'll back off and they'll suspend up. They're waiting for that water to stabilize. Since I fish lakes like this, generally I'm gonna fish that deeper version a whole lot. And when I'm fishing that deeper version, you know, it's gonna be the 110+1. That's sort of my go-to. The Shadow Rap Deep. And the Shadow Rap Deep is also a slow sink, and I really like that in the colder water, or, you know, when I'm trying to get it down just a touch more. As for the rod reel line, I like a rod that is a 6/8 to a 7 foot medium power with moderate action. I like a 6/8 to 1 speed, use my LFS of course, reel, and I'm generally going to throw 8 to 10 pound test. Now the next bait is going to be any sort of flat-sided little crankbait, like this is a DT10, DT6, and guys, I'm going to use it on days like this when I got a little bit of color to the water, when I got a little bit of wind. So basically what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to cast right up to the shore. I'm going to work that out. I'm going to follow that 10-foot contour line. I'm going to work it over some of these little lay downs here, just nice and slow. I'm just going to cover water with it. The colder the water, the slower you want to crank it. As you get up a little warmer, you can crank it a little faster. And sometimes speed it up, slow it down. You're just covering water, seeing what you can find, seeing what active fish you can come across. The good thing about the Boss is it's super buoyant. So like right there, I can feel myself hitting a tree. I just stop, I let it float up and start cranking again, and I'm past it. You know, the water's still kind of clear, and so that flat side, that nice tight wiggle is what those bass are gonna key in on. The key to this bait, you gotta be hitting bottom, or you gotta be hitting something with it to get a reaction bite. Especially like this stuff, I'm just gonna work it right through this wood, nice and slow. I'm gonna throw anywhere from 8 to 12 pound test fluorocarbon. I'm gonna throw it on a 6/3 to 1 reel, and it's gonna be a 7 foot medium moderate action. That's how I fish a crankbait during the spring. So another bait, and a bait that got me my first check in the BFLs, was the A-rig. And what we were doing was we were fishing a place much like this. This is the last creek channel swing. It's where the creek moves up against the bank. Now it doesn't have to be this defined, but it's the last deep water, the last deepest water where the creek channel runs up against the bank in the back of your creek. And what generally I do is I will stay far off the bank, and we'll make long casts, and we'll just work it down this. And I love the ones that have a little bit of wood on them, because the ones that's got the wood, that's got the lay downs just like these, generally those are the ones that you're going to get bit on. 90% of the time what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that long cast up there, hold my rod tip up at first, and I'm just going to contour down that tree, that bank, nice and slow, letting that bait contour that bottom, getting slower as it gets closer. Now I'll give a couple of twitches, you know, something like that as we're going down the tree, something that will hopefully entice any follower to go ahead and bite. but it's that simple with the A-rig. So another place you're going to want to fish this, you're going to want to lighten up the weight, is those big flat areas again. You can cover a lot of water with this thing. Now for me, again, I fish a lot of highlands reservoirs, not a lot of those flats. Generally, these are the staging points before they get up on the beds. And that means most of the time, I'm going to target these areas with a nice fat group of shad as a meal. So number one for me, guys, you know I love to throw them out on the ledges during the summer. You see it every single summer. But spring is swim bait season. And I do mean every type of swim bait you can throw. If you have a swim bait in your tackle box, this is the time to throw it. From the time the water temp hits 51 until it hits 60 plus, this is when you pick up your swim baits. And I mean from the small recon, rib baits, Kitex, whatever you want to call them, whatever Strike King calls them, to the big, you know, hollow bellies, hollow bodies, whatever you want to throw, to the big swim baits, the S-wavers, the whatever there is, the bull shads. It is time to pick the swim baits up, especially the big ones. You know, I'm going to throw maybe the ribbed for smallmouth, but don't think for a second I'm not going to pick, you know, these 5 and 6 inch swim baits up and throw for the big smallmouth too. They're feeding, they don't care, they want a steak, they don't want a finger sandwich. So, you know, you've seen, I've showed you 100 times how to throw the swim baits. This time of year, lighten those weights up. You're going to be throwing them shallow. So pull out those swim baits and those swim bait rods once it gets above that 55, that 56. I would say 57 and above for the big swim baits. But get those suckers out and start tossing them, because this is the time of year when you're going to catch a giant swim bait bass. As always, guys, this is just some suggestions, some things that I like to use. You know, my lakes are a little different than a lot of guys' lakes out there. Again, they're highland reservoirs. They're very steep, very deep. Most of the time, very clear lakes. So I fish a little different than maybe a lot of you guys do. Now, all that being said, let me know some of your favorite pre-spawn baits. When the water really begins to warm up, let me know what you like to throw and how you like to fish it. Let's help each other out, teach each other some new techniques and new ways to use these baits. But as always, questions and comments in the comment section below. You know I love to talk about fishing with you. Tell me what some of your springtime favorites are. Like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell so you get those notifications when the videos come out. You watching and your support is huge to me. I appreciate the heck out of it. You guys rock.